In this video, I'm going to be showing you some very simple basics about slipping and scoring. Most of you will already be familiar with this process, but if you aren't, slipping and scoring is the process that we use to attach two pieces of clay together to make sure that they are secured permanently. So I'm going to be showing you how to slip and score a piece to itself. You can see this cylinder here is a continuous piece of clay. I'm attaching two ends of the same piece. I'm also going to be showing you how to attach a new item to an existing item. Excuse me. So to get started here, you can see that I've made an angled cut so that the ends of this cylinder match up perfectly. When I'm ready to attach those together, I'm going to take my fork, clean off any little clay there, and the fork is going to act as our scratching tool or our scoring tool. So scoring just means that we're scratching into that surface. So what I'm going to do with my fork is I'm just going to rough up the ends there. And scoring basically creates a texture on the clay so that the pieces being attached kind of lock together almost like Velcro. So I've scored there on one end, and I want to make sure that I score on the other. If you don't score both attachment points, it's not going to stick together. So you have to make sure that you score both of those points in order to make the attachment work. So you can see here I've scored one side, scored another, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a material called slip. I don't like handling slip with my hands, so I like to use my brush as a slip applicator. You can see I have a little jalapeno jar of slip, and slip is just liquid clay. So it's clay mixed with water, and it's going to act sort of as a glue that will attach both of those points. You don't need a ton of slip, you need just enough to cover both ends. And once I've done that, I'm going to compress that together, and you can see that slip is kind of squishing out the ends. That's very easy to clean up. Once I get this secured, I'm just going to give it a snug little press, and you can either swipe that away with a sponge, you could use your fingertip. I have a tool here today I can use to clean up any excess. And then I do like to use a tool, like this little wooden tool here, just to kind of smooth out that seam. For most people, when you make an attachment of two pieces, you want it to look as though it's one, so you could easily use that tool to clean that seam up. I could also use this tool to kind of smooth off that canvas texture, but I'll save that for another time. Now, if you look at the inside here, you can see that slip is forming on the inside as well. So I'm just going to take my tool and kind of swipe up the slip, scrape the extra back into the jar, and I'm just using the tool. There's also this round end too, but I like kind of this butter knife shaped piece. And you can see here that those have been attached, and now they're perfectly smooth together, and I have now one continuous ring. This is for a cylinder attachment, obviously two ends of the same piece. If you want to attach an additional piece to an existing form, I can show you how to do that right now. So I have made kind of like a little ram's horn here. I thought it would be kind of a fun attachment. If you make it a piece to attach to another piece, you really need to find a point where they can fit together. So if I try to attach these, you can see that this rounded end is not going to be a very strong attachment. It has a very narrow connection there. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use my knife to make a cut, and I'm going to flatten out that end. And what that does for me now is it allows me to attach that piece with a much wider surface area. Now, this is a nonsensical sculpture. These two pieces aren't related at all, but I am going to attach them together just to show you how. So what I'm going to do is same thing as I did before. I'm going to score the end of one object where I want them to touch. So I've got that scored using the tines of the fork there. I'm also going to score the attachment point on the other piece. And it's okay if I score larger than what I actually need, but I want to make sure that both ends of there are scored. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my slip, and I'm just going to add it to one side on this one. So I'm going to add it to this little cylinder here. I'm going to take my horn And I don't just want to set it there and leave it. It might want to stick because the slip there is wet, but what I want to do is I want to give it a good press to make sure that they're secure. You can see now those are attached. Same thing as before, I do want to clean up that slip. For this instance, I'm going to use my fingertip to smooth that out. And you can see the slip is a slightly different color than the clay. That's just because it has more moisture in it, but they will level out to be the same color. I could certainly leave it like this if I wanted to. You will be able to see a slight seam there where both of those come together. If that bothers you, you can easily take a tool like this and just ever so gently smooth out the seam at that attachment and then smooth it over with your fingertip. You could also use a sponge. There's a number of ways that you could do that, but if you are somebody who wants a smooth attachment where you can't even tell that they were once two different pieces, you can just use a tool there to smooth that out. Now, it is possible that you may want to make an attachment, but you want that attachment to be obvious. So for example, when I'm thinking of an animal with a horn, some animals might have kind of like a bony protrusion there. I could do that certainly if I wanted to by taking a little bit of extra clay and emphasizing that attachment. So I'm just gonna make a little bit of a coil here in my hands. Don't want to dry it out too much. But if I wanted to, I'm just gonna add a little slip, undoing my hard work there. I could add this little ring here. And the slip would be enough to attach this. It probably wouldn't be necessary to score it. But I could add this little attachment and it will create kind of like that bony ridge that forms around the base of antlers or a horn. So it is possible to add in components that add a little bit of complexity. So if you like the smooth look, you absolutely could. Again, this is a nonsensical sculpture, but now it's actually created the look that the horn is kind of growing out of this form here. So I like adding in little extra details like that, especially when it comes time to start glazing. When you create these little textures and ridges, it creates a point where the glaze can kind of form inside and create some really interesting visual components. So again, this isn't anything in particular. If this could be a tentacle, it could be a tongue of some sort of serpent. So that's just one way to draw attention to your attachments. And this is also extremely secure. These are now not going anywhere. These will be permanently attached once it dries and is fired.